Yeah, I
don't
guess.
get it.
All right, Joey in Brooklyn. How are you?
Hey, Russell, how are you?
Good.
And John, right?
Yeah. Thanks. I'm doing well.
Sorry. John's great.
Sweet. All right. So I've got a little bit of an interesting conversation to have with you guys because, like you said before, that if you ever have if you want a discussion with someone, have an objective thing that you want to talk to them about, and hopefully that they'll change their minds. So I've watched your show a few times. I happen to be an atheist. However, I am also an ID advocate of sorts. And I just wanted to ask you exactly why the official definition of intelligent design isn't ever talked about on your show, or why you think it's not scientific, or like a bunch of those questions mixed together.
What's the official definition?
That some aspects of life are best explained by intelligent causes.
How is this official anyway? I mean, who are the people in authority to make this definition?
Well, the theorists themselves, right?
By whom you mean?
Like Michael Behe, or who?
Yeah, like Michael Behe. You've got Stephen Meyer. You've got Paul Nelson, Jonathan Wells.
Right.
There's a few others.
I missed it. Did you say Philip Johnson is one of those?
Maybe.
Okay. I mean, Philip Johnson, I assume you're familiar with as the guy, as the lawyer who spearheaded this thing in something he defined in a document called the Wedge document that he wrote in 1996.
Yes, I know all about the Wedge document.
Okay. What do you think of it?
I think that it is an attempt to put the teachings of Christianity into public schools.
Okay.
However, pushing for an attempt to teach God in public schools is different from a legitimate scientific theory that has resulted in your efforts to push that ideology.
But, I mean, we can agree from the start that the concept of intelligent design was basically born as an attempt to dress up creationism in pseudo-scientific clothing, right? I mean, that's what the Dover court decided in whatever that case was.
So Kitzman, something?
Correct.
Right.
That's essentially Kitzmer versus Dover. That's essentially why I approve of the judge's decision, because I found the scientists involved in that case, especially the guy who wrote Pandas and People, to be disingenuous. However, what happened was, by changing the name of God to intelligence, where changed the theory from an unscientific theory to a scientific theory.
Wait a minute. Okay, so I hate to be nitpicky, but a non-scientific theory is kind of a weird term.
All right, so let's say pseudoscience to science.
Okay, how did it change it to science, though? I mean, is it generally accepted, or, I mean, have there been many widely acknowledged, peer-reviewed scientific papers about it?
Well, I guess they would argue that there are. However, if I could just give you an example, I think that, I think that Einstein's theory of relativity was science before it was peer-reviewed. I think that Darwin's theory of evolution was science before it was peer-reviewed. I think that any... Go ahead.
I mean, I would go with you as far as say, well, I mean, okay, so there are a couple of things going on here. First of all, I mean, I would certainly agree that assuming that relativity is accurate now, it was also accurate then. And, I mean, sorry, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist. To the best of our knowledge, relativity is true, and it was always true. Like, Einstein publishing it didn't suddenly make that a rule of the way things work.
Correct.
Okay. But the reason that peer review is important is because there are an awful lot of ideas being thrown at the peer review community all the time that aren't true. I mean, you know, just as an example, there are tons of people filing for patents on perpetual motion machines, which fail over and over and over again. So, yeah, you have to be really careful about, I mean, you know, like we say about God in general, if you are going to accept something as true, you need solid reasoning or good reasons to accept them first, because you can't just conditionally assume everything is true as soon as you hear it, or we'd all be up to our ears in winning the Nigerian lottery.
Yeah, but I think also that the theory, I mean, I think that peer review absolutely has a relevance in weighing scientific ideas and whether they are or are not. However, I think that ID literature, especially in as defined by most of its proponents, is scientific and shouldn't be considered unscientific just because it's not peer-reviewed. I think it never ever gets the chance because it has this label attached to it because of the Dover trial, because of the this and that. Like, I don't really care about inclinations or what their wedge document says or what their intentions are. I care about the proper definition and a proper criticism of the definition, which so far 70% of atheists, I think, misrepresent the definition, and I wanted to just call you and ask why that might be the case, or if you think that...
I feel like I've been hogging the camera. John, do you have something to say?
Or well, my layman understanding of intelligent design is basically a big, giant argument from ignorance. We don't understand how this could have formed naturally, therefore there must be some intelligence behind it. That's kind of what I've gleaned from looking at this stuff.
Yeah, was that pretty close to accurate?
That's appropriate. However, I think any design inference is by definition an argument from ignorance in any scientific field. So in forensics and archaeology, the design inference is by definition an argument from ignorance. And therefore, if it's applied to biology, I don't understand why suddenly it matters that it's an argument from ignorance.
Well, when you argue for something when you argue for some kind of like intent in forensics, for instance, like, oh, we found a bloody knife, it probably just didn't appear at the crime scene. What kind of actors do you think they're inferring?
Well, human ones, obviously.
Yeah, okay. So, but when you say that that our human genes that are the end result of several billion years of evolution that we know of are designed, then what kind of designers are you inferring?
Well, we can a designer that obviously shares an intelligence capable of creating the effect in question. So in that sense, we derive the extrapolation from our own observations of what intelligence creates, and then we apply it and we extrapolate it.
So we're not going to assume that it's people, right?
Well, no. I mean, it could be.
Well, I mean, people invented human DNA. That would be weird.
Well, it could be what is that argument that says that the cause of the universe is the end of the cause or something? It's like the time travelers creating the universe.
Okay.
It sounds like
is that something you take seriously?
Not really, but
it
is an interesting. It's just because I don't take it seriously doesn't mean it's not possible.
No, it's not. But the time to believe a thing is after you've been presented with a good reason to expect it to be true.
Correct.
So, I mean, if you want to infer that there was some designer, then you can't just wave your hands at some mysterious property like, oh, it matches some criteria for complexity, and then say, therefore, there must be time travelers. You need to identify that there is something that, like, you need to have some kind of test for how you would recognize that there is an actual DNA creating thingy outside of the Earth or outside of time or whatever you want to say.
I don't think that's true, because that's not the case in archaeology.
Oh?
No.
What do you mean?
You infer intelligence backwards in time based on what we create. We are not the same humans that existed. But
again, you're inferring that people did it, and we know people existed, right?
No. Hold on. People. You're using people to categorize 60,000 years of human evolution.
Okay.
People. Our observation is 21st century humans, and then we're extrapolating in archaeology to 60,000-year-old humans. We don't know what 60,000-year-old humans
because of fossils
and
stuff.
Yes, but we don't know what they were capable of doing. Just because they look like us doesn't really tell us anything about their intelligence.
Well, I mean, wait a minute. So, you for some reason you're confining us to 21st century people. Does that mean that you think it's maybe an unjustified leap to say that, like, Shakespeare was a person? Or
he's definitely not the same kind of person. He's obviously 2,000, 3,000 years older than, or what is it, 1,000 years older than us. So, no, I don't think he's the kind of person.
Not
like 500, 400 years old. But,
Egyptian pharaohs, I mean, it's fair to say that they were probably people, right?
Well, not in the sense. I mean, were they creating skyscrapers? Were they creating computers? No.
You have to. I've never created a skyscraper. Am I a person?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. What I'm trying to show you is that you're limiting this idea of intelligent design because we see humans and forensics and humans creating things that humans created. And I'm asking you, why are you limiting it to humans when I'm only talking about a broader idea of intelligence, period? We know intelligence creates things. Intelligence exists in the universe.
Yeah, but intelligence isn't just this stuff floating around. It has some kind of physical manifestation.
What? Intelligence?
Yeah. I mean, intelligent. I mean, are you familiar with neuroscience?
Well, yeah. So maybe they have some form of biological form, just like us.
Okay.
But I don't care about that question. What I care about is if you see a fossil, if you see a item that is a stick and there's a sharp point on a rock and it's tied together with a string, I'm not going to just assume that it was a product of natural selection acting on random mutation.
Neither am I, because that's something I have verification that people are capable of making.
And you have something to compare it to. You have something that's undesigned to compare that to.
Yeah, and DNA is capable of being designed by intelligence, and therefore we can infer that perhaps an intelligence of some sort.
So,
well, I don't have an example of something uncreated to compare that with to determine that's created by intelligence.
Well, uncreated DNA would look much like what scientists make in the lab that have no function whatsoever, where they try to make it by chance by throwing a bunch of bases in a mixture and shaking it. And
I don't think that's quite right.
Well, however, you want to, obviously you could show a form of DNA that was connected by chance. It's an undesigned piece of string, right, that does nothing.
Wouldn't, like Philip Johnson just say, oh yeah, that was definitely designed too?
Well, no, because you're just shaking it.
I don't think you have an idea of how scientists actually work with DNA in a lab.
Well, maybe not. However, if you want to provide, you're saying that you can't say that something was designed because we wouldn't know what it was like if it were undesigned. Well, if that's the case, then you could never say that something formed naturally because we don't know what an unnatural piece of DNA would look like.
Well, yeah, and that's what John is saying is the problem with the intelligent design as a conclusion you jump to.
Right. If you just say it,
well, then you can't say that. But an atheist couldn't say that natural selection is unguided. They would have to say that natural selection simply is a process, but we don't know if intelligence interacted with it or not.
As far as we know, DNA is unguided, and we haven't seen the existence of any specific thing that could have guided it billions of years ago, and B, have come to a pretty good understanding of how DNA develops and evolves, that in broad strokes, we don't have all the details, but accounts for the level of diversification that we see now. The problem with intelligent design isn't just that they're saying, whoa, hey, we just thought, wouldn't it be cool if there could be something outside of time or outside of the Earth that could design DNA? No, they go a step farther than that, and they want the textbooks to acknowledge that an intelligence had to be involved based on analysis that they claim to have done. And that's where they got into trouble in Dover.
Right, that it's necessary.
I was okay with it, but they didn't. But Michael Behe, who was on the trial, said so himself, that it didn't need to be God. It could have been Plato's demiurge, it could have been space aliens, it could have been time travelers. He said all of those things.
But he hasn't.
But the problem is that before you start talking about what some intelligent agent did, it's backwards. You need to demonstrate that this intelligent agent is real before you can start talking about what things this intelligent agent might have done, right?
I think that it's opposite. No, I don't agree. I wouldn't walk into an art exhibit and see it painting. I know, hold on. I wouldn't walk into an art exhibit, see a painting on the wall, and assume that, I need to know that a painter was present in this room to create this event, to create this painting. What I would do is I would see the painting first,
right,
and then I would say, a designer must have been in this room.
What kind of designer? A space alien? A time traveler?
Yeah, we know people exist who paint things, right?
Yeah, we know people are capable of painting things, and we know that people exist. You are trying to jump to a point where there are some non-people somewhere who have influence over the Earth. And we're saying you need a little bit more than inference to get to that point.
And I'm saying that inference is by definition the point by which every other inference in forensics and archaeology is how it works.
No, it's not.
It is.
Archaeology studies what humans do, and we know that humans exist and have existed. Right? We have physical evidence that humans have been around.
That's an equivocation. That's an equivocation because you're using the definition of what humans do now and extrapolating by inference, which I say is granted, to 60,000 years ago when they were creating stone tools. My question with the painting option is essentially, this is what I think you're doing, is you're saying you can't just say that the painting was designed. Give me evidence that a painter was in the room to design it. That's what you're asking.
We are not getting that specific. And you're acting like this cosmic designer, or whatever you want to call it, is sort of a trivial extrapolation of the facts we know. And it's just not.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that DNA. I'm not convinced that the DNA is anything like a painting.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that a website was made and we don't know that the specific, like who the specific website was made by, and what room they were in when they made it, doesn't significantly change the scope of the issue, which is that dealing with websites falls very well within the parameters of our understanding of how the world works now. To say that there was some huge thing that's, there was something or other that we can't define, but it was smart enough to just tinker with DNA and therefore it didn't evolve, is a gigantic leap that needs to be justified in order to be called scientific.
And I think that it's justified via the DNA enigma, which is what's written.
You're doing the same thing that the transcendental argument caller said earlier. You're saying that it is justified because assuming that it's true justifies this thing that we want to explain. And logic and science don't work that way.
Well, can I just, hold on, you got to let me talk for just 1 second, because this is what I think you're applying an unreasonable standard. You're dismissing the design inference in every other field of study except for biology.
No, I'm not.
I mean, you're accepting it in every other field except for biology.
No, I'm not.
And I think that that's wrong. Hold on. Okay, so hold on. Just let me finish. So so he said essentially what the argument is, right? John just said it too. He said, I don't think DNA is like a painting. And I think that DNA is like a painting. In fact, I think DNA is like a computer code. And it essentially performs exactly like computer code. And no one in their right mind would ever think
I don't think either computer scientist or geneticist would agree with that. There are a lot of geneticists like Richard Dawkins who have used a metaphor of computer code to show how these chemical things generate life forms. But I don't think anybody who knew what they're talking about would say that they are exactly alike. Well, intelligent design people would, but they're incredibly dishonest. Present company excluded, of course.
They're dishonest. I just think that people misunderstand their arguments.
I've read Behe's entire book, you know.
Which one?
Darwin's Black Box.
Okay. Did you read Stephen Meyer's DNA Signature in the Cell?
No, I'm not going to read the entire body of literature around intelligent design, I'm afraid. I mean, I think, Behe's book wasn't that good, and everything I've heard about court cases and attempts to get it into schools have not significantly convinced me that there's more to it.
So then I have a question. So are you saying that put everything else to the side for a second, and let me ask you, could it be scientifically verified that DNA was in fact created by extraterrestrial life?
Only if we found the extraterrestrial life that created it.
Or some kind of additional evidence that we could predict from our conclusions about how and where these things might be. I mean, I don't have to have them show up at my door for tea time, but I need something a little bit more as direct evidence with some kind of prediction involved. That to convince me that these aliens or whatever exist.
Okay. Is that what you're proposing? Because I'm intrigued because the call screener said you were an atheist, and I'm thinking, well, then what intelligent force are you proposing is the reason for DNA?
Yeah, give me your best shot. Do you have an example?
Is it extraterrestrial beings or?
It could be. I don't know, and the intelligent design community doesn't claim to know either.
Okay, well, I mean, the intelligent design community, by and large, are theists, and when they say that they don't know, they are lying to get around these legal requirements.
No. That's not,
there are
that's
a
not
handful of atheists, and I know Stephen Meyer, I think he's one of them, but the vast majority of people who support intelligent design are stealth pushing a God.
Yes, but that's because they use that theory and then couple it with philosophical and logical arguments to justify their belief in God. Right. I don't go that route.
So you said it could be time travelers, but then you said you didn't take that seriously. Is there another one that you seriously think is likely?
An extraterrestrial.
Okay, and the extraterrestrials themselves, were they designed?
I have no idea.
Oh, so you don't need to answer that question, huh?
Of course not. For the same reason, I don't need to know. Is it turtles all the way down? Do you think that the aliens required a designer, or do you believe they were so simple that they didn't need a designer? Correct. Maybe they were so simple that they didn't need a designer. Maybe
but they were intelligent.
Life form was an abstract form of intelligence that requires a more complex version of amino acid combinations, whereas a nitrogen-based life form that creates intelligence doesn't. It's a different kind of evolution happening in different planets.
Is that what you think happened?
You're talking completely arbitrary. I don't need to know who the painter's father is to know that a painter existed to paint a painting.
You do in order to make this induction argument, because somewhere along the lines, as the theists would be happy to tell you, you need to get back to a source. So what is it? Is it God or isn't it God?
The source could be the natural processes of the universe.
Okay. So
that could be the case on Earth too, right?
It could be the case, but it most definitely doesn't look like it is the case.
I mean, I don't have any problem. I don't have any problem with the concept of DNA could have been planted by extraterrestrials. I just don't see any evidence that extraterrestrials ever visited. Right.
Well, the DNA could be the evidence.
You're saying that is the evidence? But that's a circular argument.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to claim to be the definitive source, but I still agree with the judges and with the scientists who gave their testimony to the judges in saying this doesn't hold water scientifically. And I think we're going to have to move on from here.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for calling.